Every story appears ordinary until you see the core side of it.
And what you're looking for is the story behind the news.
We bring it to you from Lagos, the commercial capital of Nigeria.
Giving you all sides and political stories round the clock.
Every detail from the start line to the final whistle.
CoreTV News, expanding your view.
Hello and welcome to CoreTV Primetime News, reaching you live from our Lagos studios. I am Oluyemisi Olubi, and here are tonight's top stories. And now the news in full. President Muhammadu Buhari is set to travel on Tuesday to participate in the International Anti-Corruption Summit, which will hold in the British capital next week Thursday. According to a statement released by his special advisor on media and publicity, Femi Adesina, the president will play a prominent part in the summit, which will be hosted by Prime Minister David Cameron, with many other heads of state and government in attendance. The president is expected to head the summit's opening and deliver a keynote address titled "Why We Must Tackle Corruption." The delegation to the summit will include the Minister of Justice and Attorney General of the Federation, Abubakar Malami, and the acting chairman of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, Ibrahim Magu. Before returning to Abuja on Friday, May 13, 2016, the president is expected to have a separate meeting with British Prime Minister David Cameron to discuss ongoing Nigeria-Britain collaboration in the war against corruption and terrorism, as well as other issues, including trade and economic relations between both countries. The federal government has retained major revenue assumptions in the reworked budget signed into law by President Muhammadu Buhari in the 2016 appropriation bill assented to by the president. The key revenue assumptions proposed by the executive was retained by the National Assembly. This includes the benchmark oil price of $38 per barrel, oil production volume of 2.2 million barrels per day, an exchange rate of 197 naira to the US dollar. And still on the federal government, impressed by the world-class facilities provided at the Akwa Ibom Specialist Hospital, Uyo, the federal government has indicated interest to partner the state government in order to curb medical tourism in the country. The Minister for Health, Professor Isaac Folorunso Adewale, gave the indication while interacting with the management and staff of the University of Uyo Teaching Hospital. He further stated that the Executive Director of the Sovereign Wealth Investment Authority has been told to add the hospital to those facilities that the federal government would uplift this year. Now, as part of the process to aid the government's effort, which is aimed at economy diversification and job creation in the solid mineral sector, the federal government will set up a mining intervention fund. The Minister of Solid Minerals, Kayode Fayemi, says the fund was designed as incentives for local miners and investors in the bid to stimulate growth in the sector. The intervention fund, according to Fayemi, is part of the instruments government was putting in place to increase local production. In a statement by his special assistant on media, Yinka Oyibodi, Fayemi made the disclosure during a breakfast meeting organized by the Stanbic IBTC Bank with investors in the iron and steel sector in Lagos. Fayemi further stated that the ministry is already working with the Central Bank of Nigeria, the Bankers Committee, and the Bank of Industry to achieve this. And now the Senate President Bukola Saraki and the Minister of Budget and National Planning, Udoma, have promised early passage of the 2017 appropriation bill. Speaking with newsmen at the end of the signing ceremony of the 2016 budget at the presidential villa in Abuja, Saraki called for early work on the 2017 budget in order to prevent delays experienced with the 2016 budget. He also adds that the 2016 budget will ensure that a minimum of 30% goes into capital and boost the diversification policy of the government. Labour union leaders are urging the federal government to closely monitor 34 priority projects for the implementation in 2016 budget to ensure that they are well executed. The union leaders, while commending the executive and legislature for amicable settlement after months of haggling over the budget, expects it to stimulate the nation's slowing economy, which took a hit as the price of crude oil, Nigeria's main export, collapsed in the global market. Ayuba Waba, the president, Nigeria Labour Congress, emphasizes that all hands must be on desk to ensure effective implementation of the budget. Waba further urged the federal government to ensure that the 34 priority projects of the budget were executed according to the provisions in the budget. And now northern Nigerian leaders under the aegis of Southern Nigeria People's Assembly have condemned the rumored existence of a bill in the National Assembly seeking the establishment of grazing reserves across Nigeria. They believe the grazing bill portends danger to the nation as it will institute a source of permanent conflict in the land. The group describes the move as anachronistic and antiquated, adding that the private commercial ventures should not be elevated into national or government business. Among the people at the three-day meeting were former Anambra State Governor Chukwuemeka Ezeife, who represented former Vice President Alex Ekweme, Senator Roland Owe, who represented Ijaw National Leader Chief Edwin Clark, and Senator Femi Okuromu, who stood in for Bishop Bolanle Bonigi. Ekiti State Governor Ayodele Fayose has frowned at what he calls the persistent harassment of Nigerians by the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, while describing the continued detention of Warimope Dudafa without trial, a former Special Assistant of Domestic Affairs to ex-President Goodluck Jonathan, and the invasion of the Abuja residence of former Minister of Aviation Femi Fani-Kayode as irresponsible, barbaric, and undemocratic. Fayose says EFCC under President Muhammadu Buhari is acting as above the law, and Nigerians and the international community must remind the Commission that Nigeria is a country where rule of law is sacrosanct. In a statement signed by his Special Assistant on Public Communications and New Media, Larry Olayinka, the governor said actions of the EFCC have shown clearly that it was an instrument of victimization against oppositions in the country, adding the anti-graft agency should go and study how other anti-corruption agencies in other countries behave. And still with the EFCC, the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission has withdrawn its operatives from the residence of a former aviation minister in Nigeria, Femi Fani-Kayode. Operatives of the EFCC were withdrawn after a siege that lasted almost 6 hours on Friday. Officers of the EFCC had earlier visited his Maitama home at about 10 a.m., inviting him for questioning on Monday, May 9th, only to return at midday with armed men seeking his arrest. The EFCC says it was carrying out its functions, claiming that Fani-Kayode had a case to answer over the People's Democratic Party's election funds. And now we'll move to Kogi State, where the Kogi State Governor Yahaya Bello has reiterated the commitment of his administration to provide adequate security of lives and property of the people living in the state. Bello gave this assurance while receiving elders from 3 senatorial districts who paid him a courtesy visit to mark his 100th day in office. The governor stated that his government will not rest on his oars on the issue of security challenges facing the country at large, especially the challenges of herdsmen invasion. And now the Bauchi Police Command says it has arrested a suspected female child kidnapper while trying to escape with the victim. The spokesperson of the command, Haruna Mohammed, says the suspect, 22-year-old Miriam Mohammed of Gabi in Soro town, was arrested by police detectives attached to Soro Division. Mohammed told newsmen that the suspect allegedly kidnapped an 8-year-old girl, Aziza Shitu, who had been declared missing since the 4th of May. He says the suspect was arrested at Kamfanin Katauri on Bauchi Maiduguri Road while trying to board a car with the victim to an unknown destination. A landmine allegedly planted by fleeing Boko Haram insurgents have reportedly killed 7 returning internally displaced persons in Goniri town of Gujba, local government area of Yobe State. The victims had returned to their places of abode, sequel to relative peace in their area after it was recaptured by security forces. The Yobe State Commissioner of Home Affairs, Information and Culture, Aji Bularafa, who confirmed the incident to newsmen, says the returnees were clearing their farmlands in preparation for the cropping season when they met their untimely death due to the explosive devices buried in the farmland, killing 7 of them. The Yobe State government, through its Ministry of Home Affairs, Information and Culture, is embarking on a sensitization campaign to educate inhabitants of the village. And still on matters of insurgency, the Nigerian army has handed over 65 rescued women and children from 3 Boko Haram hideouts in Bama and Dikwa councils of Borno State after they were rescued in Operation Crackdown of the military in Sambisa Forest. Handing over the hostages to Governor Kashim Shettima at the Theatre Command Headquarters in Maiduguri, the General Officer Commanding of 7th Division of Nigerian Army, Victor Ezugu, says the 65 hostages were rescued from Chingurimi, Massa and Wala villages in Bama Dikwa axis. While receiving the hostages, Shettima said that the military has recorded tremendous success in liberating more communities in Borno State. Now, the national chairman of the Miyetti Allah Cattle Breeders Association, Alhaji Kiru Azuru, has declared support for federal government's efforts to find a permanent solution to the recurring clashes between farmers and herdsmen. Zuru made the declaration in an interactive session with journalists in Benin Kebbi in response to a recent violence that occurred in some parts of the country that affected peaceful coexistence among communities. He says the recent presidential directive for security agencies to deal with perpetrators of the violence is a positive and laudable development. The Minister of Agriculture, Audu Ogbe, is asking security agencies to arrest herdsmen who move about with guns while grazing their cattle. The minister says the arrest of such individuals will violate the nation's law regarding possession of arms and ammunition, will be a short-term solution to the recent killing by suspected herdsmen. Ogbe was speaking at the prayer session of the National Christian Center in Abuja, organized by Idoma indigents from Benue State. Aside from the prayer session, the group also asked government to identify those responsible for the killings and also rebuild the affected communities. The Joint Task Force in Enugu State says it has re-strategized to meet current security challenges and check indiscriminate killings by herdsmen. The commander of Nigeria Air Force Base Enugu, Air Commodore Mahmoud Mahdi, in an interview in Enugu, vowed to prevent herdsmen attacks in the state. He, however, calls on residents of the state to cooperate by reporting and giving useful information about crimes and criminal elements in their vicinity. With the increasing uneasiness caused by deadly attacks by Fulani herdsmen, Abia State Governor Okezie Ikpeazu has concluded plans to deploy the state vigilante services, popularly known as Bakassi Boys, to communities across the state to assist in providing security. The Abia State Governor also vehemently condemns the killing of 2 butchers by soldiers at the abattoir in the Ogbo Hill area of Aba, which led to massive protest in the commercial city. Meanwhile, Governor Willie Obiano of Anambra has convened a tripartite meeting of the leaders of the Fulani community in the state, the traditional rulers of agrarian communities, and the state government to fashion out a proactive response to the killings. We'll go on a short break now. Do join us again.
With over 7 billion of world population and still counting, the world needs to hear you now than ever. Whatever your ministry or vision is, Gospel Africa will help get you there faster than you think possible. For inquiries and participation, contact 009 503 3859 or 0812-076-0011 or visit www.gospelafricang.com.
Gospel Africa, the #1 media solutions for the church today.
Gospel Africa, showing on this station at this time.
Every day, every hour, and every minute, news break in Nigeria. Things happen so fast, it's most times difficult to track and comprehend them. But that's what we do right here on Digi360. 2015, would you want to come back again?
It's like asking Jesus Christ if he knew he was going to die, will you want to come back as the savior of the world again?
We do not just help you track the stories, we break them down, explore all the angles, analyze the issues so that you can fully comprehend the stories and use them to make the right decisions.
Welcome back. To get the here's a recap of our top stories tonight. For more updates on our news stories, please visit our social media platforms. On Facebook, we are at facebook.com/CoreTV News. And you can also check out our Twitter handle at CoreTV News NG. Or you can subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/CoreTV_News. And now we take you to Bayelsa State, where the governor, Siriake Dixon, expresses dismay over what he describes as the poor representation of the state in all cadres of the federal civil service. He now calls on the federal government to reverse the alleged unfair and inequitable trend. The governor was quoted as expressing his concern during a courtesy call on him by the head of civil service of the Federation, Winifred Oyoita, at the Government House, Yenagoa. Dixon also challenged the President Muhammadu Buhari-led administration to intensify efforts and the completion of the ongoing Federal Secretariat project in the state. According to the governor, available employment statistics reveal that Bayelsa ranks among few states that are poorly represented in all cadres of the federal civil service. He further added that Bayelsa State does not have any federal permanent secretary. And still with Governor Siriake Dixon, who has promised a 9-member Judicial Commission of Inquiry to investigate fraudulent falsification of government payroll and other accounts. The governor, in a statement by his media aide, Daniel Iworiso Maxon, says the measure is part of his efforts to sanitize the civil service and entrench corporate governance in the state. The commission, which has 2 months to conclude its assignment, is also to extend its investigation into payroll fraud to the 8 local government areas in the state. Dixon, while inaugurating the commission at the Executive Council Chambers of Government House, have an 8-point term of reference to its members, with a charge on them to investigate in full the circumstances surrounding the state's payroll of public servants from 2003 till date. He described the task before the commission as important and sensitive to the survival of the Bayelsa State government. The governor also mandated its members to uncover the person or persons, cartel or gang involved in the suspected fraudulent distortion of the payroll and nominal roll of public servants from 2003 till date. Doris Adokeme is the chairperson of the commission, while Victor Slabo is secretary. And to Ilorin now, the University of Ilorin has signed a memorandum of understanding with a United States of America-based firm, Arrow Capital, for the production and installation of 500 megawatts solar-powered plant. The plant, which is to be located on the campus, is part of efforts to curb the incessant power outages in some parts of the country. Addressing journalists after the signing of the agreement, the Vice-Chancellor of the University of Ilorin, Abdul Ghani Ambali, explains that the public-private partnership with the firm will cost the company 600 billion naira. General Manager of Arrow Capital, Brian Travis, notes that the project will be completed by October 2016 and will serve both Lagos and Kano states, as the megawatts will be sold to them in accordance with the guidelines of the federal government. The federal government says concerted efforts are being harnessed among all major stakeholders to begin an expansive program to protect and sustain the environment as intense talks continue globally on tackling and managing climate change successfully. The Minister of Environment, Amina Mohammed, gave this indication during a two-day facility tour of Forestry Research Institute of Nigeria at Jericho, Ibadan. Mohammed hinted that President Muhammadu Buhari is focused on investing heavily in research institutes across the length and breadth of Nigeria, and FRIN is a critical partner to the country in environmental preservation and controlling the ills of climate change. The Global Fund to Fight AIDS, Tuberculosis and Malaria has suspended payments to Nigeria's AIDS agency over evidence that $3.8 billion was stolen by its workers and consultants. The Geneva-based agency said funds
understanding
spokesman Beth Faison said Nigeria's government had promised to repay the money and to prosecute suspects. A report by the fund's Inspector General says 7 government workers and 3 information technology consultants stole the money over 5 years between 2010 and 2014. He further stated the fraud continued because the National Agency for the Control of AIDS did not carry out proper audits. Meanwhile, the missing money is 95% of the amount budgeted to implement, administer and train users of a web-based reporting platform. Meanwhile, Nigeria has the world's second highest number of people infected with AIDS after South Africa. It reports 1/3 of all deaths from malaria in Africa and is among the top 22 countries with the most tuberculosis patients, and Nigerian officials could not immediately be reached to comment on the latest scandal, which involves falsified expense receipts. The Director General, National Youth Service Corps, Brigadier General Suleiman Kazaure, has urged Corps members to be patriotic and imbibe the culture of togetherness and sacrifices for the nation. Kazaure stated this when he visited the recently sworn-in 2016 Batch A Youth Corps members at the NYSC orientation camp along Kaduna-Abuja Expressway. Our Kaduna State correspondent has more. Brigadier General Suleiman Kazaure charged Youth Corps members to embrace the skills acquisition training offered them during their orientation exercise. He said the various skills acquisition trainings available at the orientation camps across the country were specifically chosen to equip the Youth Corps members adequately within the period of their service year and make them self-reliant. Kazaure explained that the program would equip with skills that would also make them employers of labor after their service year.
This skill operation, gentlemen, you know there is currently the white-collar job is no longer available. So, but I don't want my children to be roaming about looking for a job. No, I want you to create job for others. Let others serve you. You should be master of your own. Let others work for you.
He advised Corps members to be smart and carefully select a particular trade that fits their capabilities so as to specialize in it. The NYSC boss also called on Corps members to be good ambassadors in their place of primary assignment.
Try and respect the culture and tradition of your host community. Try and understand the do and don'ts of your host community. You don't want you to be voting or you don't do it. Respect them, respect their tradition. Try and understand the do's and don'ts.
On his part, the Kaduna NYSC State Coordinator Ahmed Mama appreciated Kazaure's visit, which he said would motivate the Youth Corps members to stay focused and achieve the objectives set for them in the camp. Mama also enjoyed them to tap into the skill acquisition training offered to them so they can be self-employed and create jobs for others.
We are positioning them to benefit from the different empowerment platform put in place by the National Youth Service Corps in partnership with some credit granting institutions.
The NYSC boss also appealed to the Youth Corps members to start learning to be straightforward and sincere in all their lives, adding that the earlier they inculcate the habit, the easier for them to defend. And in the agriculture sector, stakeholders are calling on entrepreneurs to embark on adequate research in the business before encouraging Nigerians to join the agribusiness train. With diversification becoming a focal point for economic stability, the call for the federal government to provide necessary amenities for farmers in a bid to reduce overall cost for farmers is essential. Akin Obakeye files in this report presented from our studios.
Understanding and adequate research in business is an essential ingredient in having a steady growth. This is the stand of stakeholders in the agri sector as they task newcomers in the agro-business to be guided by principles in order to succeed and tap into the abundance of wealth in the sector.
If your research is not spot on, you would have issues. So whether you're going into poultry or you're going into actual farming, what is extremely key, first of all, is you must understand what you're doing.
However, the role of the government in ensuring that farmers are not overburdened by the capital cannot be overlooked.
Capital is scarce. The financial institutions are not ready to lend to agriculture. They prefer to lend to oil and gas, to lend to they don't even go to manufacturing, consumption, mainly oil and gas. But so those are the issues that are confronting people today who wants to go into full-scale agriculture.
With the federal government putting structures in place for a revived agri sector, what are entrepreneurs expecting from the government?
Even now, you can have pyramid of rice in Kano, because even when we had the National Council of Agriculture, we visited one rice mill whereby hundreds of trucks were being evacuated.
Agriculture has been a mainstay in Nigeria's economy. A dedicated attention to this sector is capable of resuscitating the already crumbling economy. It is hoped that the government will embark swiftly on incentives for farmers and entrepreneurs. Akin Obakeye, CoreTV News, Lagos.
Labour's Sadiq Khan has vowed to do all in his power to make London better as he was sworn in as the new mayor. We'll bring you details of that report shortly after this break.
You know, Angela, that's a very difficult question.
It is difficult to respond to that question.
Angela, that's a great question.
Great question, Angela.
Angela, that is a very great question.
That's a great question, Angela.
Okay, that's a great question.
Yeah, very good question.
That's a good question.
That's a good question.
That's an interesting question.
This is an interesting question you pose.
60 Minutes with Angela. Again, answers to every question you always wanted to ask.
CoreTV News now live on all Androids.
Welcome to CoreTV Primetime News.
Download CoreTV News app from your Play Store. Click on the menu to see all our top stories from politics, sports, business, foreign news and live TV to watch us live on your mobile.
I want to know why I should be believing them.
You can also click on video to see all our YouTube videos. CoreTV News, a 24-hour news station.
Welcome back, and if you're just joining us, you're on CoreTV Primetime News. And now we'll begin by taking you to the foreign scene in London in particular, where Labour's Sadiq Khan has vowed to do all in his power to make London better. As he was sworn in as the new mayor, referring to his council estate roots, Khan, the city's first Muslim mayor, says he wanted all Londoners to have the same opportunities he has had. It comes as Defense Secretary Michael Fallon defended conservative Zach Goldsmith's campaign, describing it as the rough and tumble of politics. The march criticized campaign questions Khan's alleged links to extremists. Meanwhile, Khan beat Goldsmith by 1,310,143 votes to 994,614 votes, giving him a larger personal mandate than either of his predecessors, Boris Johnson and Ken Livingstone, never had. Medical charity Doctors Without Borders is urging the Kenyan government to review their decision to shut down the Dadaab refugee camp, warning that closure would risk the lives of more than 300,000 refugees. Lisbeth Elbrecht, head of MSF in Kenya, says the move to close the world's largest refugee camp highlights the continued and blatant neglect of millions of refugees around the world. MSF is asking the governments to reconsider this call and that international organizations should continue to provide humanitarian assistance and ensure acceptable living conditions for the hundreds of thousands of people who desperately need it. And an Egyptian court has sentenced 6 people to death, including 2 Al Jazeera journalists who were accused of leaking state secrets to Qatar. Al Jazeera has, however, denounced Egypt's allegation that the network was collaborating with Morsi's elected government. Morsi was overthrown by the military in July 2013 after mass protest, a year after he took office as the first democratically elected leader. And in the U.S., a police officer has been arrested on suspicion of shooting dead his wife and 2 other people in Maryland and injuring 3 others. 62-year-old Eulalio Tardeo is suspected of killing his estranged wife, Gladys, outside a high school on Thursday. Tardeo is a police officer with the Federal Protection Services, which provides security to U.S. government buildings. He was arrested by tactical officers without incident near to where Friday's second shooting took place. Police believe he killed his estranged wife outside the High Point High School in Maryland on Thursday as she was picking up her children. A man who went to her was also shot and injured. Tardeo has been charged with first-degree murder for his wife's killing and assault for the shooting of the bystander at the school. And our sports.
Our style, and that's what he delivered.
We begin with the Premier League, where Jamie Vardy scored a brace and missed a penalty as new Premier League champions Leicester City comfortably defeated Everton 3-1 ahead of their trophy presentation ceremony. Vardy, banned for Leicester City's 2 previous games, struck in each half at the jubilant King Power Stadium, with Andy King also on target, and would have had a hat-trick had he not blazed a second-half penalty over the bar. But personal milestones were of secondary importance on a day when players, staff and supporters of the modest East Midlands club, who narrowly escaped relegation last season, united in joyous celebration of their 5,000-1 title triumph. And in tennis, defending champion Andy Murray reached the Madrid Open final with a straight-set victory over Rafael Nadal. British number 1 Murray beat the 9-time French Open champion 7-5, 6-4 in 2 hours 11 minutes. The 28-year-old Scot will face either Novak Djokovic or Kei Nishikori in Sunday's final at Caja Magica. Murray is looking at hold onto his world number 2 ranking, which he will lose to Roger Federer unless he retains his title in Madrid. The British tennis champion set down 8 aces and saved 11 of 13 big points, and says he is working hard to improve his serve before the French Open, which begins on the 22nd of May. And back to football now. Juan Mata's second-half goal was good enough to give Manchester United a 1-0 win over to Norwich City, a result that edged the Canaries closer towards relegation from the Premier League. The defeat leaves Norwich second from bottom on the table, with only already relegated Aston Villa below them, and 2 points shy of safety with 2 league games to go. Mata struck in the 72nd minute after a header by Norwich defender Sebastian Bassong cleared the way for a run into the box by United's Wayne Rooney. United's victory saw Louis van Gaal's 5th-place side close to within a point of local rivals Manchester City, who currently occupy 4th place, and the last qualifying position on offer to English clubs for next season's Champions League. Sunderland climbed out of the Premier League relegation zone by coming from behind to beat Chelsea 3-2 today. The Black Cats were 2-1 down at home to Chelsea before 2 goals in 3 second-half minutes from Fabio Borini, and Jermaine Defoe dramatically turned the match their way. Sunderland fell behind in the 14th minute through striker Diego Costa, but were level 4 points before the break when Tunisia's Wabi Kazri struck a brilliant 20-yard volley. However, there was still time for Chelsea to regain the lead before half-time through Nemanja Matic, and in the second half, Borini turned in Patrick Van Aanholt's cutback in the 67th minute, and Defoe made it 3-2 when he seized on a cross into the box. Chelsea's defeat was made worse when skipper John Terry was sent off late on. The victory saw Sunderland go a point in front of Newcastle, who have played one game more than their northeast rivals and could only manage a goalless draw with already relegated Aston Villa. And that's all we have for you on CoreTV Primetime News. But before we go, here's a recap of our top stories. And that's how we drop the anchor on CoreTV Primetime News tonight. Do join us at 12 a.m. for more updates. I am OBMC Olivier.